There is no real normal. Your difference in neurology is just a difference. I think the most important part to remember is, at its core, it's not about attention or hyperactivity. It's about a different way of being in the world that's not inherently worse. It is worse for that individual because we live in a society built around an expectation of something different.
Welcome to Just Healing, where we rediscover humanity in our conversations around trauma and celebrate all the unique ways we love and heal. Hey, welcome to this next episode of Just Healing. We have a great show today. We're going to talk about something that I actually struggle with, and from an expert who made me understand myself a little bit. And so I think that's going to be awesome. So we're going to bring on Dr. Josh Wyner, or Dr. Josh, as we know him, to talk to you about this topic and also introduce himself. Josh,
Hello,
how are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm Dr. Josh. I'm here in Los Angeles wearing many hats. So I am the president and founder of Willow Family Health, which is a nonprofit that we have been building to treat and support neurodivergent families and individuals, with also providing support for neurodivergent therapists and a safe space for them to work. That is a little different from what they're often used to out in the field. I also, of course, have my own small private practice where I specialize in family work with neurodivergent people again, although others are welcome. And then finally, I am the program chair of marriage and family therapy for the Chicago School's online marriage and family therapy program that I've been building from the ground up.
Yes, you have built a program from the ground up, and that's kind of how I met you. I always called you my arch nemesis in the office, but you could hear me from a mile away, and I'd yell, and be so happy. And it was so quiet when I went on sabbatical, but we still talked all the time.
It's still quiet now.
But I just absolutely loved talking to you and having you explain things. And one of your things that you talk about all the time is about ADHD. And so why don't you explain ADHD? Because I think people have definitions from looking at TikToks and Instagrams that it's not really what it is. So please tell us.
So we're going to have to go backward a little bit every time we talk about ADHD and talk about how humans make decisions. And so I like the language of this amazing cognitive neuroscientist that some people have heard of, Damasio. He wrote a book that was really popular called Descartes' Error. And Descartes' error was, in his words, that Descartes says, I think, therefore I am, but really it's I feel, therefore I am. And the idea is that when you look at how we make decisions, we're really emotional first, not rational. And so in order for us to make any decisions, make choices, the emotional component is the most important one. And the way I like to think about it is it's like you're sitting in this room, we're chatting right now, and you're trying to figure out, what the heck do I pay attention to? What do I think about? And it could be me. It could be, the blinds behind me, or whatever stuffed toys are on the back there for the kitty clients. And each of those has some emotional value to you. And then amongst those choices, you decide which one or more to pay attention to. So if it's not on your radar, if it's emotionally just not there, like you're not paying attention to my ceiling fan because you didn't know it was there. So it had no emotional weight to let you know it was an option. You didn't pick from it, right? And so with ADHD, we can kind of oversimplifying it, think about it like the emotional weight of each of those choices is reduced compared to your neurotypical person. right? So at its core, that's how I would describe ADHD.
Now define neurotypical, because some people are not going to get, when you say neurodivergent,
Yeah.
neurotypical, I'm like, what are you talking about?
So the problem is I can't define it because they are somewhat made up terms, because basically we're talking about normal, right? And we kind of know that's a made up term. There is no real normal, but maybe there's average, right? So you got your average person. So you sitting, you watching in the classroom, you got all these kiddies, and the average kid is more often than not paying attention to the teacher, right? For enough time that the teacher is satisfied that they're normal and working and we don't have to worry about them. The ADHD kid sometimes is not. And if they're not significantly more compared to those average kids, then they get flagged.
Yeah.
Right? So neurodivergent just sort of means you're diverging enough off of the norm, neurologically speaking, that we say, hey, you're not normal, whatever that means.
Whatever that means. Because, normal's on a curve. There's like this end to
Exactly.
that end, and then you got the in the middle, and nobody's normal. I'm not normal. Like,
No. I'm definitely not normal.
No, that's why we get along well. We like each other's non-normality.
Yes. Right. So,
But, ADHD stands for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And a lot of people think you have to be hyper and spinning in the chair and doing all of that. And that is not true, because a lot of people don't have the H, right?
Or the A.
Yeah.
Right. I had a client once who had neither, and still we realized it was the same underlying emotional difference that we might call somatic markers, a tagging difference on those different things in the room. But he was relatively able to pay attention more often than not. He was not hyperactive, but he still struggled to engage in his life.
Yeah.
He just sort of sat at home all day, unable to self-motivate.
Right. And that's a different problem. Then they want to put him on the spectrum of autistic disorder, where it's not really the same thing. Those are two completely disorders, right? Different disorders.
Exactly. Very different, and sometimes very opposite even on some varieties of that spectrum.
Right. You have the exclusion and you have the inclusion, and sometimes, you just have the fixation, but they have nothing else, right? When it comes to autism, and people don't realize that it's not the same. And you can't put it in the same category as ADHD.
No. You can have some folks with both, right? We call them ADHD, right? AUH.
Yeah.
If I can remember all my letters in order here.
All that's in there. You also have people who have anxiety and ADHD, and those are two distinctive things too. But you have to realize that it's the thought process that's going into it that's creating it, right? That's the difference.
Exactly. And that's really why I think it's so important to understand it from this different perspective. Because if you think about it in terms of those emotional tags, right, that connection to the environment around you, instead of thinking about it in terms of those symptoms, the attention or the hyperactivity, then you can explain different symptoms you might see with what's sort of a unified theory, right? And this comes from, this guy, Russell Barkley, who's another very famous researcher in the field. He's been studying ADHD for, I think, more decades than we've been alive. And what it really looks like is, if you imagine you've got those different choices, like that, or that, and all of them have about the same emotional weight. Instead of one standing out, like, pay attention to me, right? I'm the interesting one. Those are not interesting. Pay attention to me. And if that's obvious to you emotionally, you do it, no problem. But if all of this gets reduced a little bit, then I might not be that much different than that emotionally. And now if you look at me and then you look at that, and then you look at this over here, and then you look at that and you look at that, from the outside, somebody watching you goes, oh, you're so hyperactive. You just keep flipping between different things. If instead you don't pay attention to any of it, you're like, screw this. I'm going home. There's nothing to pay attention to. You're inattentive.
Yeah.
Right? If you look over here at this instead of at me, you're kind of inattentive, or it's misplaced, or you're hyper-focused sometimes. right? So it's like each of the symptoms are just symptoms of that exact same underlying difference.
Right.
They just
Right.
express differently depending on the person and sometimes just the environment where we are right now.
Right. I remember one time we were doing comprehensive exams together.
No.
Was
I choose not to remember, but go ahead.
I know I would rope you into all my craziness, right? But I remember we were doing these, and there was this particular student that was in there, and he passed by the skin of his teeth, and he had to go make the photocopy, right? And all he had to do was bring it back. Just bring it back. Make photocopy,
Remember.
bring it back. Remember this? And I said, where the heck did he go? Like, what is taking? It's 15 minutes. It's literally less than a 30-second walk. And you go, he got lost. He was so patient. And I said, how could he get lost? I don't understand. She goes, he got lost. It was just, he didn't know what to pay attention to. And you're like, I know where he is. And you just quietly walked and got him and brought him back. And I was like, oh my God, I have just seen exactly what ADHD is. And I have it and I didn't get it until that moment, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Right? It
was just crazy.
Right. And that's really like that. What you just described is sort of my present life mission, right? Is that if we can appreciate what's going on, then instead of yelling at people and going, get your shit together, which is the usual response, you can just go get them, right? You can just help refocus and move forward and be like, your difference in neurology is just a difference. It's okay, as opposed to something to be cured, fixed, or beaten down.
Yeah, it's really just accepting that difference, because I was like, man, he really saw the world differently than me. And I just was like, I just don't get how you couldn't go to the copier. Like, but that's my worldview, right? He saw stimuli in the hallway, know?
Right. He's walking down the psychedelic hall, right?
Yeah.
And colors everywhere and sound.
Yeah. And you just rooted him up. And I was like, okay, now I understand what I'm dealing with, And what's interesting is that we have a lot of survivors that have post-traumatic stress disorder, right? From stuff that's happened to them. And they have ADHD, right? But they get misdiagnosed. They think, oh, you have PTSD, then you know what? You don't have this, and it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think people would really resonate with that.
Yeah, I admit that's a hard one.
Yeah.
Because when we're diagnosing, there are not a lot of good instruments for the psychologists out there. So for the non-psychologists, right, those are the questionnaires and the tools we use to measure. There's not a lot of good instruments that assess ADHD. I know that's one of Barclay's lifelong missions, is creating better instruments to look at what he likes to look at it from the perspective of being time blind, being more present focused, which is just a different way of describing everything we just talked about.
Right.
Because those are related, right? If something's emotionally valuable, it's also more valuable in the present. So he's been trying to develop instruments that look at that, which would help separate it from trauma, because otherwise we have so many overlapping symptoms. So that DSM, right, which gives me a little taste in my mouth when I have to refer to it. It's the best we got, right? The only thing worse than the DSM is everything else, right? But the overlap in symptoms makes it really hard to separate them from a DSM perspective. And so really that difference is this conversation about the emotional tagging. And the one way to think about it is if you understand kind of how like your television screen works or your monitor, you can turn up the brightness, you can turn down the brightness. If you turn up the brightness, everything can get so bright that it's hard to tell things apart. That might be like a trauma response. If you turn the brightness way down, it can be really hard to tell things apart. ADHD. Right? And so the symptoms look the same. I can't tell these different things apart, right? Or everything looks the same. And then one of them, though, is coming from a reduced emotional value. The other is from that trauma. You've got that heightened emotional connection to this often specific traumatic thing that happened.
Right.
All right. So underneath, that would be the way I would describe the difference oversimplified. On the outside, that's why it's so hard to separate.
Right. And it's like an upper and a downer in the same body,
Mm-hmm.
It's so difficult because when you're doing two different drugs that do two different things, you got a lot of wonky going on, and people you can't diagnose it.
Right. Your emotional speedball. Right.
Yes, yes. And for people who don't know, that the DSM is the manual that we use, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and it's in so many, you know, I don't revisions at this point, but we use that to diagnose people. But it's the best we have. That's what I always say. It's the best we have, and it does work a lot of times. But there are these particular things, especially when you're dealing with trauma survivors, that are these nuances that you have to be really trauma informed to understand that, oh, maybe I'm dealing with a little bit of something else, you know?
And I'll just throw this one out to make your life more complicated. All right. Is the above average rate of certain kinds of childhood trauma for neurodivergent individuals.
Yeah.
Right. Because with ADHD, there's actually this phenomena that I find really helpful in the office of what we call demoralization as separate from depression. Because a lot of the times ADHD clients will come in, they'll say, I'm depressed. You say, describe it. Tell me what you mean by depressed. They'll say, well, I feel like I'm bad at everything. I feel like I can't do anything right.
Yeah.
I feel like no matter how hard I try, I will always fail, and there's no point anymore in continuing to try. Are you a good person? Yeah. I'm a good person. I'm just bad at things.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you just described being demoralized over the years because probably everyone around you kept telling you, you're bad at doing everything. You keep failing. Why can't you do it better? But your own sense of self is intact.
Right.
I'm not hearing depression. Not that you can't have both. You can be demoralized and then get depressed about it too. I'm not worthy of living, things like that. But those are still different.
Right.
Right. And that's from that trauma, right? It's from the trauma of continuously being told you are a piece of crap and it's not worth trying anymore.
Right. It's a different propeller, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how can you cope with ADHD? What are some things that you can do?
So I hate that word.
I know.
You don't ADHD. You embrace your ADHD. You embrace your autism. You embrace your Tourette's. You embrace whatever your neurodivergence might be. And you say, how do I engage in my life to maximize my strengths? Right? And work with those rather than focusing on how I am not good at doing things in the particular way that the people around me and society are often just asking me to suddenly be good at.
That's pretty powerful. Yeah. Because you hit it on the head, right? So with that, I'm going to ask you, what are some things that loved ones can do to support you?
Well, first, accept. That's the most important first thing is the moment, and I've seen this in my office so many times, and it's such a powerful moment because I do a lot of couples work where you have one person with ADHD and usually another one with autism, and I don't have any research to support that this is a standard seeking out kind of relationship pairing. So I'm not saying that that's what happens. It's just
but it happens.
In my office, it happens, right? So if you show up in my office, there's a statistical probability that's very high that one of you has each, but it might just be my office. So I'm making no claims. But there's that moment when you have the ADHD partner and the other partner, and the other one recognizes that when the ADHD person, for example, is not paying attention to or following through with something that they were asked, that it wasn't with malice, that they genuinely didn't see it, and it emotionally sort of evaporated from their brain later. There's this shift in their relationship that usually happens of just accepting that that is a truth about how that person functions, because now they engage in this new way of saying, I'm going to work with that. I'm going to know that if I ask my ADHD partner, hey, in 2 hours, can you just remember to do blank? That the answer to that question is no. Right? That's it. The answer to that question is no. So what do? Right? Then we can work with it. Maybe hey, can I call you in 2 hours to remind you? Or, hey, could you set an alarm to remind you? Or whatever the workaround is, right? It's not like, oh, well, my partner won't do it, so they're off the hook. Everyone takes responsibility for their individual traits and features. But there's a moment of accepting that that is a trait, as opposed to you're doing this because you're lazy.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing it because you don't care about me. If it mattered to you, I hear that one a lot, right? If I mattered to you, you would do it.
Yeah.
I must not matter to you.
Right. And it's not that. It's just, it's not in their thought process. It's not in their perception. It's not in their, you know what I mean? Their view. Right. They're not going to do that. It's not in their context. It's not
it
personal.
Becomes the ceiling fan in my room.
Right.
It disappears off the screen, and it's not there to choose from anymore.
It's not. Yes. So it's not an option. And so I love your TikToks because you talk about all these things that are just freaking annoying. Okay. So what is annoying to say to somebody who has ADHD?
Yeah, try harder. Bob Newhart, right? Stop it. That's always a good one. What is it? Journal, right?
Oh God.
Use a planner. All right. Set an alarm. That's why I'm always hesitant about that one. I know I said it a few moments ago, but that one you have to be careful with, because I still remember I had one client many years ago who had alarms on their phone. It didn't work. So they started the session, they put the phone face down so it wouldn't distract them, right? Great. And then an alarm went off and it was on vibrate, so it kind of vibrated a little bit. By the end of the session, the phone had vibrated across the table, right, from all of the alarms that had been set for the hour. And I was like, that's not going to work. That has no emotional value anymore. That's just the natural state of your phone now, is it vibrates. It'll probably be a better alarm if it's the one time it doesn't.
Yeah. I think they kind of missed that. Yeah.
Well, you try, right? You're like, oh, an alarm. That's what other people use. Alarm doesn't work.
No.
So yeah, try harder, set an alarm, write in a journal, all of these techniques that a neurotypical, an average person might find helpful. I promise you, your ADHD individual has been trying them since they were 5.
Yes.
If they worked, they'd already be using it. And if it doesn't work for them, it's because they've tried and already determined that, not because you've come up with this amazing new idea of the daily planner that no one has heard about ever before until today.
Have you seen an ADHD person's planner? Like what they're writing in it?
Yeah. It's a journal. It's a diary.
It's a diary. It's a recipe book. It's art.
Yeah. No,
it doesn't have what's supposed to most of the time.
Right.
I just laugh.
Yeah. And the other one, by the way, this is more for the parents, is just let them learn from their mistakes. If that worked, they'd also not be there today in the current state they were in.
Right. Right. I think early intervention is key with it too. Identifying, right?
Very. It certainly helps.
Yeah.
So the earlier the better, because now you can help them learn the different ways that might work for them.
Right.
Which are going to be very individual. So it's always hard when I have these conversations because people ask, well, what do I do? Well, it's so individual. I have one older client, adult client, who actually does use a sticker chart successfully.
Okay.
They like the stickers, right? They like the way they look. They like seeing them on the wall show up every day when things work for them. That kind of stuff then works for them.
Right.
What might not work for somebody else's 8-year-old.
Right. What works for my son does not work for my daughter. And what works for both of them does not work for me. Like, I don't need an alarm clock. I can say I need to get to the flight. I got to get up at 3:30. My eyes open. No. Right. And my daughter, she just doesn't sleep. That's her thing. I just won't sleep. And when my son's like, I'll just set an alarm clock that's going to go off in my ear. But there might be 3 or 4 of them and the Alexa going off to, you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, we're chaotic because we all have it and it all shows up in a different way. Right. So, and then my husband, he's down there, bags packed, standing at the door because he's so hyper anxious about missing the flight. But yet then he's running around then trying to get the cords and everything because he's wanting to be at the door, but he forgot all these other things, right? So I'm just like, we are an ADHD hodgepodge in this house.
Right.
And our dog has it too. Like, I don't know how that happened, but even our dog trainer said, he has ADHD like the rest of your family. That's
right. He learned from the best.
But I said, he's a dog. It doesn't mean he doesn't have it.
They all do. Have you not seen Up?
Right? Yeah. Yes. And so we even have shirts that say squirrel, because we're all looking for squirrels, like, and all our squirrels are different.
Right. But you use one of the best coping techniques for ADHD, right? Anxiety.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Crippling anxiety. That works fantastic to kind of counteract some of the ADHD symptoms.
Yes. And my daughter has that, and she's like, I'm just hyper anxious. And I'm like,
Right. And hopefully we can find some different ways for everybody, because that's not our favorite approach.
Yes. We have been working on it, but we just laugh because we know it's just rampant in my house, And I'm like, we just have to embrace. We have to embrace. It's genetic. It's genetics. Yep. So, but all of this saying, you talked about ways we can be supportive and what's annoying and all of that. What are some other things? Like, what are some final thoughts you want people to really get about ADHD and how it's different, or just something that I didn't even touch on?
So I think we touched on the big points. I think the most important part to remember is, first, that at its core, it's not about attention or hyperactivity, and all these conversations about those symptoms really miss the point. And instead, it's about a different way of being in the world that's not inherently worse. It is worse for that individual because we live in a society built around an expectation of something different. Similar to if you're in a wheelchair, as much as we might say, well, that sucks and it'd be nice if your legs worked, it's significantly worse because there's lots of stairs everywhere. If there weren't, if everything were nice and flat and paved, it would be a lot easier and less significant of a difficulty than it is because of how we have structured things in our world. And there are a lot of activities in the world, interactions. I've seen, for example, my favorite is an old event photographer I used to use who had significant ADHD, and it contributed to some of the best photographs I've ever seen.
Wow.
Because he was able to just see in the moment at an event, that's the shot I want to take, and just take it without any of the hang-ups of framing and figuring out the little stuff, and then the moment is over. Yeah. So I've seen it be adaptive and helpful in the right context. And if we can remember that, and that the work is often to change the context rather than the person, I think there is a lot of movement or room for forward movement.
I do too. And how, I forgot to ask you, how did you know about Just Healing? Was it just me bugging you and talking to you about it?
And just Debra.
Well, hopefully that will change. And final thoughts, Joshie, that you would love our people to know.
Again, just to really focus on acceptance over pathologizing, right? To focus on looking at how to change the more systemic structures that are in the way, instead of trying to tell the person you just need to be fixed and fit the round peg into the square hole.
And how can people get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me by email. I've got Dr. Josh at joshuawyner.com, which I'm sure we can post. I'm on TikTok, also at Dr. Joshua Wyner. I'm on Instagram, Dr. Joshua Wyner. I think my YouTube handle is also Dr. Joshua Wyner, if I was able to update that one. So easy to find and able to be reached at all of those different social media platforms.
Well, perfect. And we will be tagging you, and I know I'll be tagging you, and I listen and watch all the time and say things. So thank you so much for coming on Just Healing, and thank you everybody for listening.